in the description of this video, I'm going to be talking about something that I started talking about in a couple of videos, like last week, one day. Well, what it is, I was talking about Yelp and how I like to use Yelp for stuff. Like I talked about, like I check Yelp for like hotel rooms just because sometimes I would rather have an honest review and have somebody say, like I went there and had a bad experience and, this is what was wrong, then, go to like TripAdvisor, like, oh, it's just the most beautiful hotel, blah, blah, blah. And I get there and it's like the worst hotel you have ever seen. And it's like just nasty, 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 just yuck. For example. Um, yeah. Well, and I know I mentioned the fact that, like, I, for example, since I'm a Yelp elite, I do occasionally get to do for free events with Yelp. And the Yelp Elite is a yearly thing. You have to like re-up it every, January. So 2 months ago in January, I had to re-up it. You know, uh, and it's it's something I enjoy doing. I've been a Yelp Elite for what 6 years, 6 or 7 years now, and like I mentioned before, it's completely free to be a Yelp Elite, and I worked with somebody a few years back that said when they found I had just become like a Yelp Elite for like my first year, and he was like the guy I worked with was like, "Oh, all that ever gets put on there are negative reviews, not necessarily." And I told him that I said, well, "What I normally try to do is I try to leave a 3-star review at the bare minimum. The only reason why I would give like a 1 or a 2-star is if my experience was so bad that I felt that I needed to give a 1 or a 2-star review. And I've actually had that happen. I mean, like, I did actually give a place a 1-star review. What was it? 2 years ago, because what it was is I went somewhere and it's just I had such it's like the person I was dealing with at the place and just the way I got treated while I was there by the staff was just awful. And I'm like, something? I'm like, I'm not going to let that slide. I want to actually, let people know that, hey, listen, this happened, was a bad experience. Just be advised that this is what's going on. I put that on there. I mean, I didn't like badmouth anybody or slander anybody and that's something I want to talk about as well with this is, my opinion is don't get on there if you're really like okay thing. Um, but and this is my opinion is, like with that example I just gave of the 1-star, I waited a couple of days or like a month or two and then went back in and basically gave a thumbnail sketch of what happened and said this is what happened, this is how they treated me, and I didn't name and I deliberately waited that long so I would forget names or whatever. As a matter of fact, I don't even remember the one guy's name that I dealt with, just because I was like, what, I was so upset after that happened that I was like, I need to go calm down. Later on, and this is something else, this goes into that whole story that I just told. Later on, I'd say probably like a couple months later at most, I ended up talking to somebody else that was another employee of that company that worked in a different department that was related to the first department that I did the review on Yelp. And, I was struggling with some stuff that, they had sent me. And they were like, well, are you using it? And I'm like, no, I have to quit using it because it's not working out for me, and I told him about what had happened when I tried, like, that first night that they were, like, trying to teach me how to use the stuff. And I told her about what happened, and I said the guy was just horrible to me. And I know that they knew who, they had to have, like, copies of the schedule and whatever, and knew, like, the details on, like, when I was there and who was there with me, and, who the staff was. And I told her, I said, it's like, I described the guy to her, and I said, I told him in detail what happened, which I won't go into detail here on that, but I told her what happened. And I said, I'm not going to, I was like, I'm going to have to return everything because it's not working. It's really, truly not working for me. And it's like, I can't keep putting myself through trying to use this equipment, you know, and it was, health equipment. And I was like, I literally cannot keep doing this to myself. I'm like, it's not working the way I thought it was going to work. And it's just, I can't use it because, I'm struggling with it. I'm not saying that I'm stupid or, something like that. That's not it. It's just, I'm a smart person. I just, it's just like every time, you know how it is, like, you're not stupid. You know how it is, like, you can work it. It's just sometimes things just don't work out. And that's what I'm getting at. And I told her about how the guy treated me like I was too incompetent to know how to tie my own shoes. I mean, let's face it, Albert Einstein was like one of the smartest men that ever lived. And that man couldn't tie his own shoes. That's one thing. But, it's like, I'm like, seriously. And I told her what happened. She was real upset when she found out that this was going on. And I said, I just feel that, I need you to report that. I don't know who you need to tell, but this is what's going on and this is the problem. And, I'm like, I need to report that. I did, I did eventually report it to the, company. And I can't tell you if they fixed it or not, but, I did notice because I checked on it later. I noticed that they closed that one department down for training. I'm like, hey, good. I mean, it's like, because somebody needed to go pull that bunch aside and tell them, hey, listen, this is the issue. And, you actually had somebody complain because of whatever. And, you need to be aware of it. That this isn't going to stand. You could get sued for this or, get in a heap of trouble with her over it. You think? I mean, so it's kind of a good thing on that. Like that, for instance, with that's one time that Yelp came in handy. It's because I'm like, you know what? They don't get off the hook for this. It's like bad behavior. I mean, like, I understand that bad behavior does need to be reported and people need to be told, hey, be advised that this is going on or this person acts this way at this company. And, you might want to be aware that if this person is there, X, Y, and Z happen. And that's how I feel about it. I did give one other place a 1-star review. And that's because it was like I went somewhere and I asked the worker a question and they got completely belligerent with me over it. And I'm like, what are you doing? That it's just like would kill you. It's like you're here working, you're getting paid to answer people's questions that come up to you and say, hey, what's this? Or, can I use this and this together? Or, could I have this and this together? Or whatever. I mean, it's like, seriously. I'll give an example of one time that I had to change a 5-star review to like a 2-star review, and then eventually I changed it back to a 5. But at this point, I would put it back down at like 1. There's a nearby restaurant to me, and hello to whoever joined me. There's a restaurant near here called City Barbecue. Well, I had given the restaurant a 5-star review. I'd say like probably 6 years ago. And I was, it's like I'd had a good experience with them. Like I'd go in, eat my food, and get at the NKU discount because I'm an alumni, and they used to have the alumni discount that I could get there, which is good because that was 15% off of whatever, I got with my husband. And sometimes, if you ever see my husband eat, he is like he eats like a reticulated python. I mean, I always joke that they named a place in Mammoth Cave after him, which is, the bottomless pit. I say it jokingly, mind you, because I mean that man can eat. And well, we happen to like their barbecue. Well, I went in there once and I tried to use my discount and like some points that I had at the time, like I'd say about 4 years ago. And this was, of course, pre COVID. And I got told by the worker basically to go F myself. And like they refused to do what I asked. They just rang me up and used, my points that I wanted to use and wouldn't give me the other, the NKU discount with it. It wasn't like I was trying to rob the place, I mean, it made me mad. So I went on Yelp and dropped my 5-star review to like a 2. Don't you know that I got contacted on that? And I told them what happened. I told corporate what happened. And like they went in and fixed it. And I told them, I was there at this day, at this time, because I keep my receipts. And I have to mention this with Yelp. I also have an app called Fetch that I use, and you take pictures with your cell phone of the receipts. Or like if you're on Amazon, you can actually upload the Amazon receipts to there if, you link the accounts. Well, I happen to have, photographed the receipt, and I told her, the day and the time that I was there. I mean, they can go, it's like I said with the other place. They have copies of the schedule for that place. There, and it's like, they go, okay, it was this day at this time. And like, they can just go in and say, okay, well, who was working the register at that time? And I was nice about it. I was like, like the person needs to be coached on, and like, on, not only tact, but like if somebody tells you, well, I have this and this, if it's not company policy to do that anymore, they should diplomatically say, well, just so you know, we can't, or blame the register, say, unfortunately, my register will not allow me to do that anymore, or something like that. Like blame the register, because sometimes it's just better, unless the person is being a total Karen. My opinion is I would rather you blame the register, say like, you can either get discount 1 or discount 2. I can't do discount 1 and discount 2. Which one do you want? And just blame the register. They'll take it better. Most people will. There's a few, like I would have, if the kid had said to me, okay, well, we can't do discount 1 and discount 2 together. Which one do you want? Well, and it's like I mentioned that to the lady. I'm like, I didn't realize that, it wasn't allowed anymore or something. And after that, the kid, I think, quit like a few months later because we went back in there. Like, I went back in there with my parents, and the kid was there and he was nice. I could tell he was pissed because I think he realized I had ratted him out for being just totally snarky to me. He thought, oh, I'll get away with it because, they're just being cheap. No, we actually used the discount because, we didn't have a whole lot of money to spend there. I mean, and before you go saying, well, you should have went in there if you didn't have enough to spend. Well, no, it's just their food prices, and I have to say this, are a bit high. Okay, they're a bit high. I mean, this was pre-COVID, and they've only gotten worse since COVID. But yeah, it's, it was getting a little high, and that's why we combined discounts, or tried to save ourselves some bread. Well, Tony and I, since then, have went in there, and we haven't been in there in like a year now. And I'll tell you why. We went in there, the last time we were in there last year, we tried to use both the NKU discount and my points. Well, the fellow working the register just basically told me to go F myself without saying it like that. He's like, you can't use both anymore. We're not, I'm not going to give you both. You have to pick one. And I mean, he was rude about it. I'm like, okay, since you're going to act that way. He's lucky I didn't say, well, let's just cancel the order then, okay? And well, part of the reason why I didn't was because Tony was getting rather hangry at that point. And it's like I just didn't feel like explaining to Tony that, the guy was being a total jerk towards both of us. But afterwards, I did tell Tony what happened. And he went, what? And I went, yeah. I said, well, we're not going to come back, because he was belligerent about it. I mean, it's just, I'm done. I didn't even bother updating my Yelp review on that because I was like, there's like no point. And I'll tell you what, it's been like a year since we've been in there, and we haven't been back since, and we won't. Speaking of not going back to someplace here locally to me, across the street from, as a matter of fact, City Barbecue, is Applebee's. I have to tell this on at the two Applebee's stores. There's one Applebee's over here in Highland. Oh, it's that way. Over there in Highland Heights, and then there's one in Crestview Hills. I'm going to talk about the one in Highland Heights for a second, and then I'm going to talk about the one in Crestview Hills. The Applebee's in Highland Heights, I haven't eaten there in 2 years almost, for one reason. 2 years ago, my mom and I went in there to eat, and it was dead, basically. I mean, there was like 2 or 3 customers like over here by the bar. There was like maybe 4 or 5 like against the south wall, and there was maybe 3 or 4 on like the north side. And then there was 2 customers there in the lobby waiting with us, who had been there apparently a minute. And and it's like apparently, like I said, that it had been there a minute. They finally sat those 2 down, and then they're like, how many? And I looked, and they said, oh, well, we don't want to wait on you. And I'm like, excuse me? I was like, excuse me? I went on Yelp and gave them like a 1 review, and I said, I'm not going back in there to eat. I haven't. I mean, it's just because Mom and I looked at each other. We were getting hungry at that point because Mom had picked me up because she wanted to take me to see Dad. Because this was before my dad passed away 2 years ago. And we're both rather salty about the whole thing. I think Mom said she went in there once afterwards and like they'd changed. Well, you know what? I'll tell you something. To this day, I refuse to go in there and eat. Just because of how they got, just because that one server was so rude to me. And I mean, like, every other time, pretty much, prior to that one time 2 years ago, I had generally a good experience, for the most part. I mean, like, they might have, like, a few hiccups every now and again, but that was, like, the first time that they were just blatantly rude to me. And I was like, no. And I even told Tony what happened. He said, yeah, we're not going back in there ever again. That's like, that's bad service. It is. I do have to tell you, Mom and I, after we left out of there were some people that had followed us in afterwards. Like, they turned around, and like they were there maybe like a minute and a half, 2 minutes after we got back outside and got in our car, and Mom had fired up the car, and we're getting ready to leave to go see Dad. Go eat and then go see Dad. Well, they came walking right back out looking pissed. And I'm like, gee, I wonder what happened there. I mean, seriously though, the Highland Heights Applebee's needs to have corporate go in there and just completely like give them an overhaul and some training, and stuff. Like they need the help. Either that or they need to be closed. One or the other. But now I want to talk about the Applebee's over Crestview Hills. It's literally right by the Crestview Hills city building. A few years ago, and this was before the story I just told happened. What wound up happening is, excuse me, this is of course one of those a friend of a friend stories. Well, what happened is an acquaintance of one of my cousins, who I happen to be friends with on Facebook, the cousin, not the friend. A friend of my cousin was on Facebook and posted about the friend went in with her son, and it was like dinner time. It was like, like between like 5 and like 8-ish. And there was these flunkies at the Crestview Hills Applebee's bar, and they started running their mouths to this woman because, she was one race and her son was interracial. I won't say what races and everything. That's immaterial to the thing. But they started making inappropriate comments to her about not only her, but her son. And it's just like, and it's like the staff didn't say, hey guy, it's inappropriate, you need to stop. Nothing. They laughed along with them. And I'm like, and she posted that on Facebook, and my cousin shared it. And I said to the friend, I said, listen, 2 things. One, I recommend you contact Applebee's corporate and let them know that this happened, and tell them that, that you're never going back in there again. And secondly, get on Yelp and let people know what happened. Give them a 1-star review and just say, hey, listen, this is the kind of, stuff that goes on, and just let it be known. You know what? I'm not slandering Applebee's. I'm just saying this is what happened. I'm just repeating what somebody said happened. And it's just, that's how I feel about it. I told her, I said, go to Applebee's.com and report this to corporate, because they need to know this happened. Secondly, go on and put it on Yelp, so anybody looking at Yelp, like if I get on Yelp and like look to see what they say about a restaurant, because I've never been there before, say, if they see this negative comment, like, this happened to me, and it's like, don't go there. It's one of those things where I look at that and I go, really? Because seriously, and this is something else that I'm getting at, is the negative reviews. Like, I read those, and if it's something stupid, like I mentioned in the one video about, the person complaining about going into, like, Skyline Chili and not having it all be 100%, meatless meal. Hello, there's just some places that it's just one of those, like, well, duh, kind of things. And then the other one is, like, the one I just told about, those drunks being inappropriate towards her, where you're like, excuse you, you don't need to be here, and, it's like you're losing business. I think corporate Applebee's, I told her, I said, needs to be made aware of the fact that this is going on in one of their restaurants. And, it's like it's costing them money. I mean, I've never known of a corporate business like Applebee's or even City Barbecue to allow that kind of stuff to go on. They're in the business to make money and not to be losing business over, like a worker being rude, or like, a bunch of stupid drunks at their bar being inappropriate to somebody. That's the thing. And that's part of the reason why I like Yelp so much, is that way you can, not only A, report it to corporate wherever, but B, you can let everybody know, hey, this happened to me at this restaurant, and you might want to watch out. Trying to think of the, because I just had thought of it here. One thing, and like I mentioned this, with the free Yelp events and stuff. I mentioned it in in the first video, where I was talking about how I went up to a place in Mount Adams over there in Cincinnati. Cincinnati's that way from where I live, because I'm facing east. That's north, and that's south. Over there in Cincinnati, and I had a less than good experience there. I mean, it was okay. Like I said, I was there alone, because Tony was supposed to come, but Tony had something come up, that kept him from going. It's like they were just very disorganized. And, um, I gave them a 3 star because it's just like it said right on their webpage, or the webpage for the event, that, they just came under new management, but it's like I cut them somewhat of a break. I mean, it's like I said, I could be a bit of an asshole about, places, but it's like my question is as well, how long ago did you just reopen? It like in the last month, 2 months, 6 months? If they reopened like 6 months ago under new management, that's one thing. You've had basically half a year to get your stuff worked out. That's how I feel about it. If it's been 6 months or longer, you need to have your act together at that point. Because, you had long enough time to beat out the bugs out of the system. I don't mean like cockroach bugs. I mean like issues bugs. Like, the left hand not knowing what the right hand's doing or stuff like that. And it's one of those things where I'm like, look, it's this. Suck it up, buttercup, and deal with it. But like them dropping the ball and me not getting my appetizer after I was there for like 45 minutes to an hour. I was like, you know what, forget it. I don't have time. But I'm actually glad I left when I did, because I was actually outside watching the weather for like a little bit that night. And I got to feeling like, okay, I need to just go home. It was the weather that was making me feel that way, because it was an electrical storm started up. Like, literally, like, as soon as I got in my car and got on the street, I kid you not, it was like the biggest freaking electrical storm blew through right as I was going back home from Mount Adams. I mean, it was like, and it was like it lit up the dark nighttime sky like it was like noon. And I was just like, I was sitting there going, oh Lord. I'm like, oh my Lord. I'm like, oh my God, it is storming out here. I'm like, oh, I mean, seriously, I was completely freaking out. And I'm like thinking, oh Lord, just get me home, get me home, get me home. And Mount Adams is like way up on a hill on the east side of Cincinnati. And it's just, it's right there by the art museum. And I have no problem going to the art museum. 9 times out of 10, though, I'm usually gone from the art museum before it gets really stinking dark out there. Usually. I mean, I was like, I have no problem being at the art museum because it's relatively safe. It's like I get out of Eden Park well before it gets like dark, like 10 o'clock, at night dark. Especially during like November through February. Pretty good about it. But, anyway, it was dark and it was an electrical storm. I was like, I got back here to the house. I went, oh, sweet Jesus. I was like, I tell you what, by the time I got here and I parked in the driveway here, I was like, oh my God. Wow. I was like, but yeah, I was just, it was like I said earlier in this video, I didn't do the review for a couple of days. I held off because I was like, I wanted to think about what I said, for one thing. And secondly, I was just so rattled by the storm. I was like, I'm just going to wait. I'm just going to wait and decide what I want to think about, what I want to say before I say it. I know I gave a 5-star review that was absolutely hilarious. Or actually, you know what? Just today, I got an email from Yelp, and I did a review of a little tiny place down there in Lexington, Kentucky. It's called the Mary Todd Lincoln House. Yes, that Mary Todd Lincoln. As in the 16th president's wife, Mary Todd Lincoln. In case some of y'all don't know, both Abraham Lincoln and his wife, Mary Todd, were born in Kentucky. In fact, Mary Todd was born in the Lexington, Kentucky area. And seeing that it's now, what, March the 20th, I think, or thereabouts, March Madness is going on right now. Guess what happens to be in the Mary Todd Lincoln's house backyard? Rupp Arena. You know, uh, Rupp Arena, that's, where the University of Kentucky's basketball team, the Wildcats, play. Yeah, I mean, it's literally like right in their backyard, pretty much. I mean, it's like you walk out, you'd have to be blind not to see Rupp Arena in the backyard, pretty much. I mean, when you're down there, you're like, Rupp Arena, you know? I mean, it's like, here's the Mary Todd house, here's Rupp Arena. I mean, they're like right there. There's like a street literally right between the two of them. And I wrote a review about Mary Todd Lincoln House, and I said, it's right there by. Somebody else said it's right there by Rupp Arena, but it's one thing I said in my review on Yelp was that, it's a nice house. It's rather small. It's only 3 floors, and it'd be a little teeny tiny little just regular old Joe house. I mean, I would go back down there if I could ever get time off with Tony and get him in the mood to go for a day drive or a day trip. But of course, one place that we've been like a bunch of times and absolutely love going just because it's outside and it's relatively free unless you want to go into the museum is the Perryville Battlefield. Tony and I have been to Perryville Battlefield, 5 times now? 5 times. I'm not kidding. We like it that much. And as a matter of fact, the battle at Perryville happened 160 years ago on October the 8th, 2022. They had a historical reenactment of it on the day of. I wish I could have went down there for it that day, because I would have liked to have seen that. I mean, and they do actually do reenactments down there. And just so y'all know, because, I'm writing a book on Perryville and the Mary Todd house, which goes into one of the, like a couple of the other videos I've posted on here lately. I am, writing an urban legends book now, or I'm trying to. But, it's like with my first book getting published on Mammoth Cave, it's, I've just decided to, work on some other related material about stuff here in Kentucky. And it's like Yelp is actually helping me get some of these places, like see like where they are and like what people are saying about them and if it's even worth the drive. For example, I mean, it's like I use it for stuff like that. Of course, where I live near Cincinnati, Ohio, and this is something, you guys might want to be aware of, with Yelp, like, they have, like, the whole country divided up into, like, cities, like, like the major city, and then, like, everybody that lives in that area is associated with that one city, even if they live in another state. This is why I bring this up. Since I live so near Cincinnati, Ohio, my Yelp membership is associated with Cincinnati, Ohio's Yelp elites instead of like Lexington or Louisville, Kentucky, because I live closer to Cincinnati than I do Lexington or Louisville. I'll tell you, it's like you get badges when you're Yelp or when you're on Yelp as a Yelper. One of my favorite badges, and this was hilarious. It was like the first badge I'd gotten in like a year and a half. I got last June for my birthday. It was called Crosstown Magic, and I'm like, I had seen it on other Yelpers stuff, and I thought it was like, okay, how do you do that? How in the world do you get Crosstown Magic? I got it last year. I'll tell you how you get this badge. What it is like Tony and I were in Louisville. I love Louisville. Tony loves Louisville. And we were at my favorite hotel in Louisville, which is the Galt House. If you've never been in the Galt House, it's an experience. It's 2 buildings across one street. This place is like enormous. It's a convention center, basically. Well, we were there. We checked in after we ran amok, across town at the Muhammad Ali Museum and the Fraser Museum. And that's where the world's largest Louisville Slugger happens to be. And it's like Tony and I both checked in on Yelp at the Muhammad Ali Museum and the Fraser Museum, which are like near each other. And then when we got upstairs, checked into our hotel room, and upstairs to our room, I checked us into the hotel on Yelp. And voila, got this badge. The both of us got it. I was like, hey, I mean, I was like, works for me. I mean, it's like fun. It's like you get like all these like fun badges and stuff. Like I checked in on Yelp at BW3's down in Newport one time around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and I got beer o'clock or something like that. It was like it like had a beer on it. I'm like, I'm not even here drinking. I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm like, okay, whatever. There is one badge. It's called BF, like Yelp BFF, and it's like an Earth and a moon on it. That one you get for checking in a bunch of times with somebody else. It's like you and the other person get this badge together, and it was so funny. I got that one with Tony. What, like 2 years ago? Because we checked into, I forget where on Yelp, and we it's like that popped up, like, what? And I like looked at Tony's thing, and he got it too. I was like, hey, I was like, hey, works for me, man. But yeah, I enjoy Yelp if for no other reason than it's like it helps me like get like if I can't remember like for example, and this is one other thing I like about Yelp is like occasionally I'll forget like when a place is open, and like say I'm not home to where I can tell my dot to give me the hours or something. I can't say something like, Alexa, what time is the Kenton County Library open tomorrow? And here,
Campbell County Public Library, Cold Spring on Alexandria Pike in Cold Spring is open tomorrow from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Something like that, for example. Yeah, I have an Alexa here in the house. Yeah, it's stuff like that. I mean, it's like, occasionally, like I've almost went, Alexa, what are the hours for the Erlanger Library tomorrow?
Kenton County Public Library on Kenton Lands Road in Erlanger is open tomorrow from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m.
I mean, I love that thing, but there's times when I'll be out somewhere and be like, what time are they open? And I almost call that thing up, call my dot up and ask it what time stuff is. But yeah, Yelp comes in handy with stuff like that. Oh, and it's like if you ever, and this is something that I did, speaking of the Erlanger Library, last year Yelp had, for example, wrong hours listed for the Erlanger Library for I think it was either a Friday or a Saturday, one or the other. I think it was a Friday, but it was Friday or Saturday, either way. I get there and they're closed, and it was like 6:30, 7 o'clock, and they were closed. The library closes on Friday at 6, and on Saturday they close at 5. Well, one thing that's awesome about Yelp is they like if you go somewhere that they have listed on there, and it's like the hours of operation are listed differently than what they show. Like the nice thing is like they'll allow you to upload photos to them. In fact, they encourage it actively. Well, what I did was I went to like the pane that actually had their hours of operation, Monday through Thursday 9 to 9, Friday 9 to 6, Saturday 9 to 5, and then Sunday 1 to 5. Well, I took a picture of that. Like I fixed it to where you could clearly read it in the photo. And I snapped the photo and then sent it to Yelp with a correction to update the business. So that way they would know, hey, you have the wrong hours listed. And here's, the picture of the hours. And occasionally, this is one thing also I wanted to mention. Sometimes you let them know that a place is closed. Or sometimes it takes them a while to figure out that, hey, this place is closed. Like, for example, near the Erlanger Library, there's a Taco Bell that went out of business last month. And I let Yelp know that it went out of business last month. I even texted them pictures of it. To my knowledge, and I haven't looked in a minute, but to my knowledge, they haven't ever fixed it. Oh, well, I mean, it's like, but you can let them know. Sometimes it takes them 3-4 months to catch on that you're telling them, hey, this place is closed. You can even text them pictures, and it's like, huh? But yeah. Anyway, I'm going to pause here because I want to take care of something, and I'll be right back. So, hang on.